Hey out there, all you MUA TV viewers, this is Joe Blasco, and I have a real special treat for you right now. You know, there's another end of the business that you may not be familiar with, and that is after production, the actual viewing of the motion picture. That end of production requires the work of a very, very talented man known as a projectionist. All right, well, today we're visiting the home of a very famous projectionist in Western Pennsylvania. My old friend, Mr. Frank A. Bolkovac. All right, now through this door right over here is a projection room that is actually in Mr. Bolkovac's home. So if you will follow me, we're going to go into the projection room and we're going to meet Mr. Bolkovac. And he's going to explain all about motion picture projectors and how a motion picture is actually run in a theater the right way. Follow me. Mr. Bolkovac,
How are you?
How are you? How are you? Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you for inviting me and all of our MUA TV viewers into your projection room.
Yeah.
Can you explain, firstly, how long have you been a projectionist?
43 years.
43 years. And why did you want to be a projectionist?
Why does anybody want to be anything? It's just something I love.
Especially in the movie business.
Especially in the movie business.
So you've had a very successful career.
Yes.
Here, right outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. How many theaters have you worked in?
Oh my, I would say almost everyone in Pittsburgh. Almost everyone, even back in the days when there were single theaters, the big Stanley Theater, the Warner, the Fulton, with the balconies, and Greensburg, all the Stanley Warner theaters there, mostly all multiplexes.
Now, today, since then, what are the differences? What's occurred in the business?
Well, today, instead of using what you see here, reels, they use what they call a platter system, where you would take these reels, splice them all together onto a turntable. Here you're seeing two machines. This is the way it used to be, with two machines running, and you make changeovers. I don't know if anybody ever noticed up in the right-hand corner, about every 15 or 20 minutes, you see a little round dot. And a lot of people ask, what's that little thing for? That's the end of every reel. That would give the projectionist a cue of when to make this changeover from one reel to the other. Now, up here is a built-in reel end alarm that when the film gets down to about a minute left on this machine, this bell will ring, telling him to get the other machine ready to fire up the arc lamp, be in his stance position looking out the portholes, and when he sees the first little round cue, he'll start the machine running, allow the light to go through the machine, and on the second cue, he pushes the buttons that switches the one machine over to the other, and no one in the audience knows the difference.
So it just looks as though it's switching from one shot to another
One shot to another, and no one knows the difference.
Okay, now just in case you didn't follow along with that, we are going to go step by step and show you and explain to you exactly what happens the minute the film arrives at the theater. So the film is sent to the theater by a distribution company?
Yes.
Okay, and it comes in normally how many reels and how long are each of the reels?
The average reel is 20 minutes. I'll show you.
Okay, let's take a look at, we're going to look at an average reel. Okay, here we go.
Come in film cases like this, with the labels on the top. It says the distributor sends it out, and this doesn't have it on it, but
it says here distributed by Hollywood Film Company, Hollywood, California.
Yeah, this is actually the people who make these cans.
Oh, I see.
So there would be a label here that says to what theater it's going to, and inside the film comes on regular 20-minute reels. The average feature is 6 of these. Now this is a 20-minute reel. You could put 20 minutes on here, and that's all of 35mm film. Now, they could come in 17-minute reels. I've seen them as much as 4-minute reels. Why, I have no idea. Usually the last reel will be 4 minutes. And the average show is 6 of these, 6 shows, 6 reels like
Interesting.
this.
That's very interesting. Now, the film, is it distributed by the film company? For instance, if a film is made by 20th Century Fox and it says released through 20th Century Fox, does that mean that 20th Century Fox actually has a distribution
Yes.
division that sends the
Yeah.
film out,
Yeah.
and they arrive by special delivery, by Federal Express?
No, well, today, yes. It could be Federal Express, it could be anything, any type of truck, ups. But they do have their own people like that do nothing but distribute film for them. And they have their own depots where all this is stored. You can go into a warehouse, which is like 5 times bigger than this, or 10 times bigger than this house, filled with racks and racks and racks of film cans. And the film comes in cardboard boxes on cores, not on reels. And it's their job to transpose those cores onto these reels.
So they're not sent on reels at all?
No.
The projectionist has to actually put them on a reel.
No, the depot puts it on a reel
I
for
see.
the projection booth.
Once you get the film, it's on reels, right, in the theater.
Yes.
And I recall you once telling me that you had to do a lot of splicing work before the film could be shown. What do you do to the film once you get it?
Well, if you look talking about the previews, like they run previews and commercials and things, they all come on little rolls. And you got to splice all that together on a reel. And then today's automated equipment, you would splice all these reels together and transport through a special transport table. And then that would run directly onto one complete roll of film that sets horizontally on this deck.
On a platform.
On a platform that revolves.
Right.
Now there's 3 of those
So
decks.
that means you don't have to. There's no changeover any longer.
No
right?
changeovers, they're all
'Cause all
runs.
your reels are all.
It's one big
spliced together.
show on one big roll. And you just run the complete show.
So that way you're able to then run multiple shows at the same
Multiple
time.
shows at the same time.
And so these multiplex theaters, describe a projection room in a multiplex. Say there are 18 shows going at once.
18 shows at once, you will see a long hallway to the length of, say, the back of the theater. And these machines, like these, would be set up, one machine per theater with its transport. And you would go up in its own sound system, which is like behind you.
Now, when you say it's transport, you mean that platform that has
transport.
the platter that has the film on it,
Yeah, that's called a transport.
and it feeds into this.
Yeah, it feeds right in. There's no magazines. They've done away with that in the early 70s, late 60s. For the simple reason it's all safety film now. But
Now,
for
safety film, as opposed to
the nitrate-based film, which
so
is
film
highly
was,
flammable.
At one time, it was made out of nitrate.
Yes.
And it would catch fire very easily.
Oh,
right?
yes.
So that explains for why everything has to be encased in
Everything
metal.
enclosed. Yeah, everything has to be, because you could not rewind film like that in the open. It would be against the law. But they didn't have those big reels then either. These were, when they first went to automatic projection rooms, they put them all on big reels. Then you placed the big reel on a spindle here, which was all open.
Now that reel will fit
Will fit.
completely in this,
Yes,
and it will
goes
take
right
up
in
all
there.
of that space. Now, a reel that fills this entire area, how long is that?
Depending on the hub size, now if it's a hub size like that one, you could put about 70 minutes
70 minutes.
on one reel.
Wow. You can do practically an entire picture on this thing.
Yeah, you got
Very
a
good.
small enough show.
All right, now let's look at this projector, and obviously this is an older model projector, right?
Yeah, this is like in early 50s.
right, early 50s. But there are still, I would say, probably the majority of the theaters that are still out there, especially in the small towns all across the country, still have these projectors, right?
Some of the big megaplexes actually have these particular brands in them. They
see.
don't wear out.
All right, now I'd like you to explain everything about the projector and how it works.
Okay, right up here, this particular sound head, which sets up on top of the projection head. This is the sound head here, optical sound head. This is the old magnetic sound head. When they first came out in 1953 with CinemaScope and stereophonic sound, you needed one of these. The soundtrack on the film is magnetized with 4 stripes, like a tape. And it's picked up on this, what they call head cluster. And there's 4 heads actually built into this. One for left, right, and surround, which is the way they did stereophonic sound then. and you would run your magnetic film through this part of the sound head. Now this is kind of obsolete. This is only for screening rooms or maybe some review rooms where they would have access to that type of film. I have some film that you can run through this, and it's kind of impressive watching an old movie with stereo. This is the projection head part, which operates the film portion, 35 millimeter. And down here is the sound head part, which has a reverse scan in it. Let me put that on for you. This is the latest innovation here, which is the red LED reader. Before, they used exciter lamps, which are nothing but bulbs. That would take up this compartment here. It would go through an optic with just white light and be picked up on here with either a photocell or later on a solar cell. Now this is the latest technology here, which is what they call reverse scan, which is the LED light scans a cyan soundtrack, which reads red today, and it's picked up on its own pickup in the back, and that is fed through your sound system.
Very interesting. Then this is
where the film is taken up. I have a reel in there.
There's a reel already in there.
And it works. I'll show you.
Surprisingly, that's relatively quiet. But you don't hear that at all out in the theater.
No.
Is there any special soundproofing that has to be put into the walls in order to keep the sound in the projection room?
Oh yeah, for THX actually, your auditorium has to pass their code, which means you can't have no squeaky chairs, no squeaky exit doors. The air conditioning units, you can't hear them, and especially the projection booth. They have a double wall, thick of concrete.
I've seen, it's funny you should say that, I've seen projection on some theaters before the movie starts, that if you're not satisfied with the sound quality of the film, to write to THX and to give
write
them,
to THX.
Yeah, and to give them the name and the address of the theater, and if you can, the theater manager's name, and I suppose that they would really come after the theater and say, hey, what's going on, right? You've got the THX system in there, and you've got squeaky chairs and doors that are...
Yeah, if there was anything you weren't satisfied with.
What about people eating popcorn and crunching...
Yeah, what about that?
Yeah.
And why did they put that little notice at the end of the movie when everybody's gone?
Right, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was at the end, wasn't it?
Way at the end, the last thing you saw before the rating.
Because they don't really want a lot of irate people calling them. Now let's do this. Let's put a reel of film on this. Or before we do that, we're gonna show you how it's threaded through the projector. But before that, explain this mechanism right here. This is the arc lamp, right?
This used to be an arc lamp. I have it converted for a screening room with just a regular quartz bulb.
I see.
But in here used to be a carbon arc. What they used to use carbon is where you would strike. The carbon arc would be right where this projection bulb is right now, which serves the same purpose for a smaller picture.
And that would be a long rod of carbon that there would be a positive and negative charge, right? And then where they would connect.
It would form an arc.
It would form an arc of electricity.
And it would just keep burning.
Now, how would you maintain the color temperature?
The color temperature is already automatic from the arc. It's a blue light.
But it is, but the length of the arc or the...
Oh, yes, over here. I see what you mean. This is your arc screen right here. You would keep your positive... This would actually project here, up on here, through a mirror, which is, I'll show you. And your positive end would be here. Your negative end would be here.
It has to stay within it.
Yes. Now your color temperature would drift away if your carbons got behind a little bit. So you had to always watch this indicator to make sure your carbons were together. And that gives you your most brightest light would be in between this gap right here, which is now shows the filament of this bulb.
Right, exactly.
But it has nothing to do with the color temperature.
No. Now, this is a tungsten bulb, so this color temperature is about 3,200 Kelvin, which means that to get true color, you'd have to do some sort of a gel, a blue gel, a color correction gel, to make that right.
Yeah. This is a scene from an old film called Barabbas, and it's in, actually it was filmed in Super Technorama, which was 70 millimeter. As you can see, it looks long and thin in there. This is the soundtrack here, running along here. Now, what we do is put an anamorphic lens on, which is an expander lens, and it looks normal. Now, today's soundtracks, you can have sound on a disc, CD disc like this.
And then it syncs up
It
to
plays.
the picture.
It plays on a processor, which locks in with the. This is your time code on the film. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's these little dots and dashes going by here. That's your time code. That locks the film in sync with the disc. This is your regular optical soundtrack. Once again, right here, the two little lines, bias lines they call. Now, you've all heard of Dolby Digital. This is your Dolby Digital track right here, which looks like a snowy screen, if magnified, the little brown. And you've heard of Sony Digital. This is your Sony Digital tracks, which is two. This blue band here, and this blue band here.
So you have several different
Different
types of
soundtracks.
soundtracks, depending on the type of equipment they're using.
Yeah, yeah. The disc would be another sound head on top of that sound head, which just reads that time code, and that's fed into a processor which locks that film in sync with that show.
Are you all following this?
I know.
We're talking to makeup artists and hairstylists who are going, why are they showing us this?
I know.
Next time you're in a theater, you'll be able to look up at those little windows and say
All this
to
comes
whoever
from
you're
there.
with, yeah, I know what's going on up there. Okay, let's go ahead and thread one of these babies and show us how it's done.
Okay.
What exactly are you doing here?
I'm actually rewinding the first reel of
This
Barabbas.
is the Barabbas.
Or second reel of Barabbas.
Who's it?
Actually, there's 8 reels to Barabbas. 8 of those. 8 20-minute reels. But I have them all spliced together in 2 big ones.
This film is, what, from the late 1950s, early 1960s?
1962.
62. Wow.
That's what you call a floating hub.
A floating hub.
It floats from here to here because the inertia, when you start a film up in a projector, you want this hub to turn first before these because it'll actually stall the reel and your film will back up in your sound head and it could easily snap it when it starts to catch up speed. So on the take up on the bottom, you use a, I've already got one in here, floating hub, see? When a machine starts, watch the center, it'll start by itself. See? It's not dependent on the sides.
Oh, interesting.
Otherwise you could break the film right here. Okay, now this reel.
I'm going to get out of your way.
Oh, no, not my way. Go up in there. Most of the time. One student closed me with it. Okay, now it's locked on. There are many stories of in theaters running reel to reel, they would forget to lock this and it would fall out. And I know one projectionist one time, he was standing looking out the window and it fell out, hit him in the chest, landed and broke his foot.
All right, now you pull it out to what point?
There's like 8 seconds between cues, between the first dot and the second dot. So this film leader is graduated down each second. So it goes 8, 7, 6. So you would thread this on 8, which would be the correct distance for it to change over. So I'm not going to thread this because this is optical sound.
I'll hold the door open.
So now you go down through the projection head, and you got to turn it over to your. This is what makes the picture move. This intermittent movement down here. It pulls one frame down at a time. On 35 millimeter, this has to be locked so you don't hit the screen out of
Now,
frame.
is there such a thing as a gate on the projector?
This is the gate right
Okay, because there's always, after every shot in motion pictures, they always
Yeah.
check the gate of the camera to see if there's any hair or any
here. Yeah,
kind of
exactly, on the
particles.
aperture. There's
And
an
do you-
aperture in here. This is the reverse of a camera,
Right, exactly.
actually. This is the aperture. Actually, this is the aperture plate.
So this is coming, oh, I see, there you go.
See? That's actually for scope, cinemascope.
So that cuts it off perfectly, right?
This shows the whole frame. Cinemascope's the whole frame.
I see.
The 185:1, it's cropped. It's not as high.
So that's put in there. It's kind of like a masking device inside.
Exactly,
Aperture.
exactly what it is.
Okay, so the
Put the
pictures-
film right in
then,
this.
Then the
Just a
little,
little.
sprocket wheel, sprockets on go into the holes on each
I
side
don't know
of
if you
the
can
film.
see this little viewer up here, the little square up on top. You have to probably look in this way. See it right up on here, top of here.
What are we looking at there?
It's like the aperture. This aperture actually is up here, so you can frame your picture.
I see.
If you put it in too high or too low, you're going to be out of frame on the screen. You create a small loop there.
So that locks it into the
Yeah, on the sprocket. Small loop there. And we're going to go into the sound head here. Open these rollers. That locks it in on the sound drum.
Now, how fast can you do this?
Oh, pretty fast. About 30 seconds if I
30
had to.
seconds, if you have to get it done that fast.
On most machines. I've operated almost every type of.
Can we give you a test?
No. Of course, there's some machines that I'm all thumbs on, which come from overseas. They still use in theaters, like Cinemecanica makes a machine. Actually comes from Cinemecanica.
Mechanica. Say that fast 3 times.
Yeah, and actually,
Cinemecanica.
it actually threads backwards of this. Now this is a safety here. See this how this pulls the film up?
Right.
See how the lights change color up there?
Oh, look at
The
that.
green means go. Now if the film would break or split, this would drop down and that would go into yellow, which would shut the machine down.
Oh, really?
And the lamp house. So you take the film around here. I usually like to replace these leaders on these old classic film with Mylar film, which is really hard to break. This is regular acetate film, which you can tear with your hands, but Mylar you can't tear it.
So the part of the film that has the numbers on it that pulls the film through, the part that you actually thread through first, is called the leader.
It's the leader.
Now, is there a trailer at the end of the film?
They used to call it trailer, but somehow that word got into be known as previews. They call
Right,
it
so
trailers.
I
previews.
remember when trailers
Which were
were known as
previews.
previews.
Yeah.
Previews of coming attractions
And they got that trailer because it always,
came after the film.
it trailed the feature.
Right.
The previews. They would go over either a cartoon or a newsreel, and I still remember running newsreels. So what does that tell you?
Paramount News, I remember that.
And you give it some turns by hand, make sure it's all tracking right. See how it's going through there?
To make sure you've got all the right slack.
Oh yeah, you can easily miss a roller here or a sprocket, and you will end up spiking what they call spiking a print. These little sprocket on here would actually punch holes into that film if it's wrong. You could ruin the soundtrack, and
You get pops and all kinds of weird.
you get all kind of noise.
Okay, great. Let's close
That's
this.
Close it up. This one's ready to go. Now everything is automated, which means if when a changeover comes up, I don't have to be back here. It'll change over by itself, as long as you put the foil on the end of the film that
Right.
tells us what to do.
Now, this is reel 1. You say most movies have, what, 3 to 6 reels, right?
20-minute reels.
20-minute reels. And so you have reel 1 in here. Now, do you wait any length of time before you put reel 2 in, or do you put reel 2 in immediately after you've loaded this so that you know that it's done?
Before showtime, yeah.
Because you've only got
Running.
20 minutes.
Yeah, running a conventional theater, you would get both machines ready and your lamp houses with your carbons. Now they're xenon arcs, which is the same as a carbon arc, except it's in an envelope of glass, which we'll see that later.
Okay.
You don't need carbon rods anymore. But at the time, and, you know, like a lot of hometown theaters still using carbons, you would get both lamp houses ready with your carbons in it, so you have enough for 20-minute reels.
Right.
And you'd trap the next one.
I remember when we were both kids, because Frank was my friend in high school, and we made the movies, the Mad Dr. Roderick and Bandar together. I remember when we would go up into the projection rooms in the theaters, and it was hot in there. And these lamps, these arc lamps, well, this is now an arc lamp housing, but it's a housing, there's no arc in there any longer. But you couldn't really touch this because it would get so hot.
Yeah,
I mean, you could
get hot.
you'd burn your fingers. You know, so just to explain that, what happened? Here we go. To explain this once again, there was a metal rod, a carbon rod, that would attach at one end and would come out to about here, I recall. Then there was another piece that would come down, or from one end or the other. One was positive and one was negative. I suppose the carbon was positive, right?
Yeah, those parts used to go to this bracket here to hold the positive.
I see.
The negative used to be in back of here. Now this has been totally converted.
Oh, yeah.
And the negative end, there's a blower motor in there now.
Right.
The negative end would be in here. And there would be an electric motor on the side that would feed these carbons together as they burn away.
Right.
And the heat and the exhaust would go up these pipes to outside because there'd be poisonous vapors coming off of
But
it.
I was always so fascinated by it, you know, because you could look through this little window here.
Yeah, it looks like a little candle burning.
And you would see the arc in there, and it looked like nothing. It would just look like a little flame in there. But if you were to open this,
Open it.
it would
blinding.
it was like the sun. It was an amazing thing to experience.
yeah.
We're going to be right back with more of Frank Bolkovac and his very interesting, real professional projection room in his home right after this. Don't go away. Whew. Say that fast 3 times.